Okay, welcome back, everybody, to another vinyl record haul. I haven't done one of these since the summer, so I figured this will be my fall record haul, even though I got most of these through the summer. Some of these I got for my birthday, some of these I got because I had ordered earlier in the year, and then they finally came in. And I'm still waiting for a number of albums that I had ordered earlier in the year that I was hoping to include in this that just never have arrived yet. So still waiting on those, and hopefully in my next record haul I'll be able to talk about those. But for now, let's just talk about these. So I've grouped these like with like. I hope that will help. The first couple of them, though, I'm going to start with my used ones that I picked up, because this Canadian Thanksgiving I went to Aurelia, a fantastic little city just north of Toronto by about an hour and a half or so. And they have one of the best record stores I've ever been to. If you ever find yourself in like central Ontario in like the Simcoe County area, go to Alley Cat Records. It's on Mississauga Street in Aurelia. It's well worth your time because I picked up all these guys. And yeah, there's another one that's newer that I'm going to be talking about. But I wanted to start with the used ones first, and I picked up a bunch of stuff from Wendy Carlos. So her Switched On, I already have the original Switched On Bach, but I picked on the Switched On Brandenburg or Brandenburgs, the complete concertos. And I love the shine that we have on here. And the music on here is just fantastic. You know, it's very Wendy Carlos, very like Moog synthesizer and all that. It's fantastic. It's a double disc. And, you know, even though it's a longer record, it never really feels its length. And similar to that, I also got the Switched On Bach 2. And it's even got a little promotional for Switched On Bach, the first one. The long-awaited sequel to Switched On Bach, the most popular classical record of the decade. So yeah, number 2, which is great because it covers a lot of stuff that Wendy didn't cover on the original. So yeah, love this one. Love that one. Great, great times. And if we're talking about Wendy Carlos, I cannot talk about the soundtracks, or I would have to talk about the soundtracks that she did with Stanley Kubrick. She's found a number of times on Clockwork Orange. Time Steps, there's, let's see here, where else? I think she does some interesting stuff with like the Ninth Symphony from Ludwig von, the March from A Clockwork Orange. Yeah, performed by it's Wendy's dead name on there. I guess they, you know, I get it. It was before she completely transitioned, and that's cool. But yeah, so Clockwork Orange, great stuff. And honestly, what makes that movie so impactful is the sounds that Wendy was doing on that record. So then I finally was able to pick up David Gilmour's first solo record as well as his second solo record. I grew up listening to these boys because my dad had the CD of them, but I finally was able to pick them up in record format. And yeah, it's great stuff. I love so much of these records. You know, I love his solo work. So now I have his entire collection. I mean, he only has 4, right? As far as I know, there could be another sneaky one hanging out there that I'm not aware of. So those are the used records that I've got. Let's dive into some of the newer stuff. And this past fall, I've been listening to a lot of popular, newer, kind of contemporary pop, specifically more in the ethereal dream pop. And the one that I've been listening to more than anything else is Magdalena Bay. This record, I want to make sure I got it, Mercutial World, is just fantastic. I've been working on what I've been calling my pumpkin spice latte mix, which is just a bunch of tracks like this. And as I've been building it, you know, with a lot of Lana Del Rey, which I'll be talking about in a little bit, Carly Rae Jepsen and Taylor Swift, and you know, a bunch of that kind of more ethereal style of music. This one kept getting recommended within that mix, and I listened to this album and I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. I also put on Spelling. I put on Wise Blood. So that kind of like feeling. And I've been loving that. If you love more of like the dream pop, ethereal pop that has some really great crescendos on there, that's very synth led, I think you'll get a really good kick out of that one. And since I talked about Wise Blood, let's talk about, I finally picked up Titanic Rising. I fell in love with In the Darkness, Hearts Aglow, which was my introduction to Wise Blood, and everybody was saying that this was her better album, so I picked it up, and they weren't wrong. You know, I still have the fondness in my heart for In the Darkness, Hearts Aglow, just because that was my first introduction to her. But this one has some outstanding songs. So if you're kind of in that vein of like a Kate Bush style dream pop, I recommend checking this one out if you haven't already. And I mean, I mentioned Lana Del Rey, so let's talk about her latest record. Did you know there's a tunnel under Ocean Boulevard? And yeah, I've been loving this record. It was released much earlier in the year, but I was hesitant to pick it up because it was always a little bit on the pricey side. And I specifically wanted a variant cover because I think there were like 4 or 5 different variant covers. And this was the one that I wanted. You know, we got the side boob going on there. I'm going to come right out and say that that was part of the reason. But it also just, I don't know, for me, it fits the vibe a little bit more of the album than some of the other ones. I also just love the pastel pink that's going on there. You know, I'm a very pink person. So, yeah. So I picked this one up. I've been spinning it quite a bit, and it sounds great on the turntable. And finally, I got the score of one of the best movies that was released this year. I'm talking about the Barbie film. This is Barbie, the album, and I've been loving this. It's just specifically for I'm Just Ken. I can't remember if it was Todd in the Shadows that said that we didn't have a summer bop this year. And I would challenge him by saying I'm Just Ken was the summer bop. You know, that was the track that I had in my head more often than almost any other song throughout this entire year. I've been loving this, and I've been loving some of the other tracks on this, like Lizzo's Pink, Dua Lipa's Dance the Night, the Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice Barbie World, I could honestly do without, but yeah, I think also the Tame Impala, The Journey to the Real World, that is such a bop. It's such a short track, but man, it comes and it delivers, and I love it. So yeah, had to pick this one up, and obviously, it's in, it's in bright pink, because it has to be. It has to be. If it wasn't in bright pink, I would write a very strongly written letter to the producers being like, hey, you guys had one job, and luckily they fulfilled it. So yeah, great movie, great soundtrack. While we're on this train, I finally picked up Dedicated, because I already had Dedicated side B, which I actually like a little bit more than the actual album, but Julian still is a banger. You know, there's still a lot on this album to love. Too Much is an amazing track. Everything He Needs is great. So, you know, a little bit more of an intimate album than her previous and post works. But, you know, I still really, really enjoy it. So I've been in a kick of, you know, the Carly Rae for a little bit, just with her last album, and she released, whatever the companion album is to The Loneliest Times. I think it's The Greatest Times or The Happiest of Times. Anyway, she's done this with all her other albums, and I wanted to pick that one up. So there we go. Now we're moving on to something completely different. This year has been a year of a children's cartoon that's pretty much made for adults, and that is Bluey. So I picked up the 2 Bluey soundtracks because my partner and I have been loving this. Every single track on these albums just bang. Like, you really need to listen to Pool. Pool is the track that I think everybody will love. I also love when you put these albums together, they create their own little picture there. So, you know, I really love that. You know, there's Bluey there, and we've got whoopsies, wrong side. Bingo there, just chilling on the deck. Dance mode has obviously dance mode, which I've been loving all year. It's just really fun music. So had to pick those up. It was a must, absolutely a must. And if we're talking about soundtracks, at my birthday, my partner gave me a little bit of money for records, and she's just like, go to a record store and just have fun. So normally I wouldn't have spent so much money on one specific album, but this one was like $60, $70, which is a little much, but I've been eyeing it for so long. It's one of my favorite soundtracks, and that is the soundtrack to Batman Returns. It's so haunting. It's so beautiful. In my mind, it's one of Danny Elfman's best scores. True, he's written more memorable scores like Beetlejuice and the original Batman and Edward Scissorhands, but I think this might be his best score. You know, like, He incorporates the original theme a number of times, but what he does for the Penguins themes are so haunting and so beautiful and so menacing that it's the perfect the perfect companion to the movie. So finally picked this one up. Very, very pleased to have it. And it just sounds pristine. All right, now we're getting into some new stuff. I've got 3 new albums here. I haven't actually picked up a lot of newer releases this year. A lot of it has just been kind of like filling out the nooks and crannies in my collection that I hadn't already. But I still want to pick up a few. The first one that I wanted to pick up was one of my favorite metal albums of this year from Air Not Meant for Us. And that is it's by Fires in the Distance, Air Not Meant for Us. This album is just beautiful. If you're more into like the dark black metal, if you're into like the really like intense death metal, but you want a little bit more heavenly sounds to it, specifically on like a traditional grand piano, please check this one out. This album has been haunting me throughout the year. It's going to end up on like my best of list for this year. It's absolutely beautiful. I think the track Adrift Beneath the Listless Waves, as well as Crumbling Pillars of a Tranquil Mind, both of those tracks are just so killer. So absolutely killer. So if you haven't listened to this one by now, please do yourself a favor and listen to it, especially if you're into like that more heavy music that has moments of these beautiful passages. Another one that I picked up in that kind of same vein, I finally picked up the Oceans album of Heliocene. I have a little bit of a gripe with this one, though. Now, one of the main reasons, I'm just going to show the gatefold there. One of the main reasons why I actually picked this one up is it is a single disc. It has a full book on the one gatefold, and then it's a single disc. And for the most part, I love when an album is presented in a single disc, but it does not have my favorite track off of the album. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Unconformities, and sure, it's the longest track off the album. So yeah, very disappointed that the album is missing my favorite track. And it doesn't get nearly as much spinning on it. So when I do my whole record year-end kind of show and tell, this was going to be probably the most disappointing record, not necessarily because of the music that is found on it, but because of the music that is not found on it. So moving on, one album that has more music on it than the studio, or I guess the actual release, I finally picked up The King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. This is Petro-Draconic Apocalypse, or Dawn of Eternal Night, an annihilation of planet Earth and the beginning of the merciless damnation. So I keep it in its kind of like brown paper bag folder there, because when we look at the album proper, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but like it's raised up. The actual dragon there is raised up on there. There's the boys. There's all King Giz there. And then we've got the 2 albums, 1 and 2, right on there. And I believe I've got the orange, the Toxic Orange color. So, been loving this record. Some really great progressive thrash metal. It took everything that I loved from Infest the Rat's Nest, and put in things that took out things that I didn't like from that record, and put in a lot more of the proggy side of things that I love. So this is still one of my favorite metal records of the year, and one that I can't get enough of. The 2 tracks that end this album off, 10 out of 10. Okay, one that's new but not really is another one of the Dream Theater's Lost Not Forgotten. This is their Live in Berlin 2019 album, and I already had another one that they put out. I had the one from the 90s and then another one from like the 2000s era. But I got this one because I really like the set list that's on here. It has A Nightmare to Remember, it has In the Presence of Enemies, and it has Peruvian Skies. So those 3 tracks alone were enough for me to pick this one up, plus a bunch of tracks from the later albums that, when performed live, have a little bit more context of why Dream Theater recorded them. Like Untethered Angel, Fall Into the Light, Barstool Warrior, and Pale Blue Dot are fine. on the studio record, but I actually really, really like when they perform them live. And if that wasn't enough, you have As I Am and Scene 7, Part 1, Dance of Eternity. And here, I'll show you the inside. There's the pictures and there's the track listing. So yeah, great live record from Dream Theater. Really enjoyed that one. These last handful are ones that I picked up to help fill out some of the nooks and crannies in my discography. And the first one I picked up almost completely on a whim. This one is Spock's Beard Snow Live. I believe this was one of the albums that they did at Morse Fest, because constantly Neil Morse will do an entire album live, and I think he had like Nick DiVergilo on here helping him out, because Nick has come on a number of times. I think he actually has the whole group with him. Like Rio's here. 10 Lettered is on here on lead guitars. He's helping them out. Jimmy Keegan is also here helping them out as well. So like the two drummers really help fill out the sounds on there. And honestly, in my mind, I think this is one of the best iterations of Snow that we've ever gotten. Love the original album, but there's something very special about this album in particular. Just with everybody from Spock's Beard helping them out. Really, really love this one. Really love this one. So had to pick this one up. And yeah, it's on 3 discs. And it's interesting because like the liner notes, like the actual track lists here, does not line up with the pressing on the vinyl. They're kind of all over the place. They don't line up all that much. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. And then I think the final side is just encore. Anyway, love this record. Absolutely love this record. Then I had to pick these ones up. It was a travesty that I didn't have them in my collection at this point anyway. So I finally picked up my 2 favorite Frost records, their first 2, starting with Milliontown and going into Experiments in Mass Appeal. I love both of them equally. I'll go into moods where I want to hear a little bit more of a darker experimental album, and I'll put on Experiments. And there are other times when I just want that pure retro prog, kind of in the neo fashion, and I'll put on Milliontown. The one thing I will say, though, is they've kind of remixed this album, and I'm not quite sure if I enjoy it as much. Like, they took off the spoken word at the beginning of the title track, which for me is one of the best introductions to an album or to a track, you know, where it was, have you ever noticed in the Bible, whenever God needed a killing or to punish somebody, he would send an angel? So do you ever really want to see an angel? And they removed it, and I was a little saddened about that. But the way that they cut it so that it could fit on the album proper, I really enjoy and I really appreciate, because trying to cut up that song to fit on one side of a record is a task, and I've seen some bands where they'll just literally stop a song right in the weirdest moments, but these guys stop it in a perfect point. So yeah, Milliontown and Experiments in Mass Appeal, finally have it in my collection. Part of the reason why I was really dragging my feet is every time I see this in a record store or even online, it's always way too expensive. And I'm like, I love these albums, but I'm not spending like $60 or $70 on it. So when both of these were on sale and I got it on like an Amazon Prime Day, I felt justified spending like $45 a piece rather than $75 for one of them. So yeah. The next one for filling up, this completes my Lindsey Stirling set. This is her Shatter Me record. I believe this is her sophomore record. And I really enjoy this one. You know, this is a fun one. What's funny is that it's pressed in a 45, and I didn't realize that until I put it on the second side. So I listened to the first side, I'm like, oh, this is a lot more down. You know, this is a lot more dour. It's a little bit more atmospheric than I'm used to. I'm usually expecting her to be much more lively, a lot more like intense. And then when I got into Shatter Me, and it's the first track with lyrics, it sounded like the person was underwater, and I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be okay. And then I clicked it on to 45, and I'm like, there we go. That's a little better. But yeah, if you love violin music and you love more of like the dubstep electronic sounds, this is one to check out. If you haven't listened to Lindsey at this point yet, I highly, highly recommend it. I wouldn't necessarily start with this one. I would either start with her first one, but I mean, for me, my favorite album from her is, of course, the Christmas album, but that's just me. Okay, we've got 3 more. This was the other album that I found at Alley Cats, and it felt like a sign, because if it hasn't been uploaded already, I was on the Prog Reports channel doing an episode all about Yes. And this was actually one of the albums that I was given. So a little bit of a spoiler alert if you haven't seen that. But that is The Ladder from Yes. In my mind, this is one of the most underrated and underappreciated albums from Yes. It even says on the insert here, the first words that Bruce Fairbairn said to the band were, "Make the best Yes album you can, the rest will follow." And I feel like in the late 90s, this is the best music that Yes had done up to that point. Pretty much from, and I would even include Tormato, like Tormato and Drama, like those albums were good. I would say that this one's better. So I love The Ladder. It has some of the best music that Yes has done, and I'm so saddened that it kind of got lost to time. This with Magnification are 2 of my favorite Yes albums, so I'm glad that I was able to gush about both of these. So this was kind of like a sign for me. I was in the record store and I saw this and I'm like, that's a sign. I have to pick this up. So I did. Yeah, I've been loving that one. Been loving just spinning that one. The final 2 records are records that I bought at a gig. Earlier this year, I got to see BT Bam do the whole Parallax album. But honestly, one of the main reasons why I went to see them was because Thank You Scientist was opening up for them. So I finally was able to pick up their first one, Maps of Non-Existent Places, and still in its wrapping, because I haven't had a chance to listen to it, The Stranger Head Prevails, their sophomore record, which is fine. You know, out of the 3 records that they've put out thus far, this one's my least favorite one, but I still needed it because it still has some amazing tracks on there. But Maps of Non-Existent Places are just, still to this day, one of the best modern prog records out there. So love this record, had to pick this one up. And of course, if I'm going to get the one, I might as well get the other. They were also selling Terraformer, but I already have that one. So didn't need to pick that one up. So yeah, those were the 2 that I picked up, and that finishes my record haul for this video. Those are all the records that I've picked up since my last video. I still have a bunch of records coming in that I will show probably at the end of the year. But yeah, those are all those. Now that I've shown those, I can actually put them in the cubby behind me, and yeah. So that's about it. What records have you picked up within the last couple of months? Or even within the last year, if you don't collect as avidly as some of us do? What was your favorite record? What was your most, surprising record? Let me know all about that by commenting down below. I also want to remind everybody that the Quid Pro Quo YouTube channel is back up and running. I'm going to be putting up a new video in a couple of weeks, I think, depending on when I upload this guy. So I'm really excited for you guys to check that one out. Neve the Prog Nerd and I talked about some Pink Floyd band members' solo records. So really excited for you guys to jump on that and enjoy, because we had a blast, and I can't wait for people to watch that. So yeah, I'm also probably going to be rebranding and rejigging the podcast that I have with Grace Hayhurst of The Metalhead. We're going much more into prog because that's where both of us love, and we hope that connects a little bit more with our audience. So just little teasers of things to come. So, but that's all I've got for me for today. I want to thank all of you for joining me on my gushing of the records that I've picked up. And I'm really excited to see what albums you've picked up thus far. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.